Yeah, it is 6 o'clock. Okay, I will call this meeting to order. This is the second budget workshop for the City of Williston. It is Tuesday, August the 15th. It is 6 p.m. Ms. Wright, if you'll please call the roll.
Mayor Goodman,
I'm here.
President Jones.
Here.
Vice President Robinson.
Here.
Councilmember Bullock.
Here.
Councilmember Cox.
Here.
Councilmember Hines.
She's running late in traffic.
Okay. City Manager Terry Bavard.
Here.
Attorney Scott Walker.
Here.
Finance Director Stephen Bloom.
Here.
City Clerk Latricia Wright. I am here, and all other staff.
Thank you so much. We appreciate y'all being here. We have our room full. For a second go around, I promise you it will not last as long tonight as it did last time, because if so, we're going to go home. We will at this time stand for the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance from the Mayor.
Join me if you will. Lord, we come together as a city with the leaders of our community doing everything they can to work together to create a budget that we can all live with. I ask you to be with each one of these leaders, each one of these counselors, help them to see through the massive amount of information and details and to come to a conclusion that they feel is best in their heart. I ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, at this time, we are here for the review of the revised budget 2023-2024 and any other budget-related items. And we will start, if there's no contradiction from anyone else, with Mr. Bloom's slides. You have the floor.
Oh, thank you, and good evening. Basically, I put together, it's a very similar slideshow to what we've already seen. I did update the numbers, and I'll kind of go through them more top level at this point, kind of highlighting the changes more than anything else. The rest of them are in there for reference in case we need to kind of go back to something. But overall, you know, they're basically the same setup and structure that we talked about at the first workshop. The first thing I wanted to do is just kind of remind everyone what the roadmap is moving forward after tonight. So on September 12th, you have your first of two public hearings. At that point, you will adopt a tentative millage rate and basically a tentative budget. Now again, like we talked about on the millage rate, at this point you cannot go higher. And so you'll be talking about kind of any cuts on the terms of that, but overall you can still make changes to your budget document at the first public hearing. From there we will publish a full ad. I don't know if anyone's you've probably all seen it. It's basically a summary of the entire budget goes out there for everyone. And then you have your second public hearing on September 26th. Both of these are starting at 5:30 p.m. And that would be when we actually do the final adoption of your millage rate and your budget. After that, within 3 days, we've got to get information over to Department of Revenue and everyone on terms of what the final millage rate is. So that's just kind of a roadmap for you on where we're heading. Keep going here. So this is just kind of an outline of the book. Nothing really different here. In terms of overview and assumptions, keep going. Did not make any changes to your total team count. Everybody is still in there. Updated your payroll cost. The good news is this budget now has your reduction in medical. I mean, that's a big change from your last version. But overall, your payroll is right now, and payroll cost includes everything, you know, all the way including benefits. That's about 1.2 million all in. Your last version was 1.37. So like I said, there has been a reduction in there. Next slide. All your pension rates are the same, FRS is the same. As I mentioned, there's a 5% decrease in health premiums. It's about $153,000 from the last version that you got. Again, that's across all funds, so every fund benefits from that. I believe the general fund piece of that was a little bit over $70,000, so not quite, but half, but certainly right there, so very good. There's still some estimates in there that could hopefully be benefits, although we know that some of the property is not going to be a good number when we get it. So what we've got in there is what we need. Maybe workers' comp might come out a little bit, so there might be a little bit more in that. Currently, the transfer, we talked about this quite a bit at the first workshop. The last version, it was $1.5 million that was coming from the utility fund to the general fund. This version, it's down to 1.35. So again, we were able to reduce it. The current year, the year that you're working through right now, it's 1.1. So obviously a little bit of an increase, but not quite as much as what we had before. We talked about the cash reserves, and you can see there for each of the funds, there's a little bit, airport's got about $75,000. It's kind of going towards general repair and kind of keeping the airport. CRA is required to use all $500,000, so that's why that's in there. The utility fund is a carry forward of items that's already budgeted, already been approved. I keep it in the budget just so it doesn't get lost. In the general fund, even though you're seeing $62,000 of cash reserves, half of that is related to an assessment. And we talked about the fire assessment, in which case once that assessment, if the report was to be done, if the assessment was put in place, then that would be included in the first assessment, this cost, so it would come back. Overall, again, when you look at your budgets and you start talking about it, we've talked about payroll, we've talked about quite a bit of capital, you don't have enough in reserves, across the board. I think we've talked about that quite a bit. It's just worth noting, again, as you go into certain parts of the budget, again, we've tried to add additional reserves. You'll see quite more sinking funds in your current budget. It's starting to improve. But again, general fund in particular, there isn't a sinking fund that's in there right now per se, and that's something moving forward you really need to start thinking about. The loans in here, 2 of them, nothing's changed, the fire vehicle and the communication equipment, both we've talked about. CalLink requires the transfer of 104 coming from the utility fund. We talked about the shared cost pages. They're in there. Airport capital spending, did not make any changes to that. The millage rate, this is again just kind of as a reminder. This is the millage rate that's going into your trim. It's 6.75, which is the same millage rate as this year. And then, as mentioned and put in yellow, all the revenue that has been provided through the rate studies is included in this budget. So it's about $2.1 million, and again, obviously that would be a big hole without it. Next slide, thank you. So overall, all funds in, this is kind of breaks it down by categories. Talked about the biggest piece year over year is the payroll, personal services, that's about $1.2 million. Then from there, you got operating expenses. Debt service means inclusion of the potential new loans, the little pieces of those. Capital outlay, and then some another category, which is some other smaller things. Similar to the last slide, I did take your payroll costs and update it to show you now, based on the new numbers, where the year-over-year increase is. And, a couple things obviously pop out, salary adjustments. We've talked about quite a bit in the last workshop, the different positions and the salary changes. But the next biggest number is a number you really don't have control over, which is retirement. So year over year, your retirement is going from a nice $168,000 all the way up to $529,000 in 1 year. And again, that's FRS, and that's obviously your 2 pension plans. And again, to keep them as funded, as healthy as they are now. As a list of your capital projects is on the next slide here. Again, no changes. The only thing I'll keep mentioning is within the airport, I have carried over projects. They call prior year projects. Again, don't want anything to kind of get lost. These projects just don't get done in 1 year. So they get started and just for the kind of how they work. Other than that, I mean, you can see you've got $7.5 million in capital projects and purchases budgeted for next year. Of that, 6.2 is in the airport. And then within that 6.2, everything except for $60,000 is 100% funded through grants. So in the absence of that, I mean, your next highest kind of project is really more, purchases than it is actually projects per se, at least in this particular plan. And that's it. Again, very top level. Just kind of, again, highlighting the changes that, obviously, any of the little changes we talked about during the workshop are in here. Some of the, different small amounts. A couple people, we requested to put some money in there for them, and we did that. Some names I got caught up in terms of, hey, here's who's actually in this position. But, the big changes that we're talking about really is the health being lowered. And then the other piece, the final piece that I did want to mention is that the other thing that came in between the last workshop and this one is the state generates revenue estimates on everything else. All, local option, discretionary. These are all the other revenue items that come in, state sharing, all that stuff. So they did their final, it kind of trickles in throughout our process. So they did all of their final estimates, and that gave probably another $75,000, $80,000 on top of, what you got from the medical insurance. So again, through all of that and everything, we were able to basically reduce the transfer, and that was kind of the objective. Not quite down to the 1.1, but obviously from 1.5 down to 1.35.
Any questions for Stephen thus far?
I don't know if we're covered, but I kind of got lost in the reserves.
Okay.
Just for the record, Ms. Hines has arrived, and it is whatever time it is, 6:12. Thank you.
So let's go back to the reserves.
Okay.
So, and again, when we're talking reserves, you got to throw out the CRA, right? That's really kind of every year it's generating whatever it has, it can spend, it can get a loan, but it's not gonna. You're not going to build a reserve in there. What you're talking about is your utility fund and your general fund. Those are the two ones I look at. Now, airport is a little bit different as well, because obviously they get grant money. But even the airport, through timber sales and just other, good fuel sales, and they've started to build themselves a reserve. So when we talk about reserves, we're talking about the general fund and the utility fund. So in a completely 100% happy, healthy budget, every year you're going to be putting away money into reserves. In particular, when you have a utility fund, and you want to have a certain amount of money that you are putting in for future projects, knowing that you don't know when certain emergency stuff will occur. You don't know when some of the larger projects that maybe you might not want to finance, with bonds or anything, or what grants you're going to get. On the general fund side, your reserve in particular is dropped down from $1 million down to like 750, 700. And I think when you look at the math, you probably want to have back to like $1 million would be where I'd be comfortable with it. And then the utility fund, it's really hard to say. If you look at your 5-year plan, that kind of tells you where your reserve would want to be, and obviously you're not anywhere close to that. Now, what I would say about the utility fund is part of why you're doing the rate studies is to start building that back up so that every particular service is able to operate on its own and then have money set aside. And that's kind of what the team has been working towards. So when you look at each, we spent so much time on personnel the last time, and rightly so. But this time when you kind of look at the bottom of each of these budgets, they've started to add sinking funds in there.
Right.
And again, we started really small. So, over time, they've got some good plans. But really what you're going to want to do is get your enterprise fund back up, and you're going to want to build a little bit more to your general fund over time. So just something to keep in mind, as we're building this type of stuff doesn't happen overnight. But if you start cutting things too much, then what you wind up happening is going into reserves. I don't know, Terry, if I answered your question.
I think you did, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. On page 8, debt service, up 132.8%. Is that a product of the loans?
So, yeah, you have the $100,000 loan for fire and police, which is not this, but you also have budgeting for the CRA. So there's going to be a CRA loan, coming in, and so I've already budgeted there. It's not in yet, meaning it has not been signed, sealed, or anything, but I'm assuming that it's going to be ready to go, and that's most of that.
So is the city hall in there too?
The city hall is already in there, so that's not an
Yeah,
increase.
I thought so.
Yeah. You were just
what
talking
you're
about
carrying
the
forward.
increase, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am.
So the increase is going to be related to, you're going to have potentially 3 loans. You're going to have a fire vehicle, that's $170,000. You're going to have the communication equipment, which is
$50.
$250.
At least 250.
And you're going to have the CRA pieces for it's about $1 million loan. So that's in there.
Those are in the budget when you're calculating the total budget as if they were going to happen?
So basically what I did is on different levels, and let me clearer on that. So with the CRA fund, I assumed a start date of 10/1. So basically a full year worth of payments. So that's principal and interest, that's $277,000. With police and fire, I did not think you would get by maybe the fourth quarter, if you were lucky. So I just put a little bit in there just to make sure I had a placeholder for it. But the big piece, the big increase from year over year is the CRA. Because in the CRA, in your current year budget, you have $27,000 just interest. Next year, you're going to have $277,000. So that's, about, a 900% increase right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're doing, we're starting, or are we adding to funds to go for utilities for pole replacements and things like that?
So there are several things that they're doing. The first and easiest to spot is to look at the bottom of each one of them and see literally the word sinking fund. So that's a piece of it. They have some other things that they're going to work through, but when you're looking at the rate studies were all requested to start to include reserve money in there. Now, when the health insurance went down for the utility fund, it generated, obviously, a nice savings. So I took all that and I put it into a line called contingency. It's under electric in case anyone
I
hasn't
saw
had a
that.
chance to see it. Let me
highlighted it.
give you the amount so we can know what we're talking about here. So that amount now is $233,000. So that, again, it's under contingency, but the hope is at the end of the year that is, again, something that can go into a sinking fund for electric. It doesn't have to be electric, but basically the idea is it's great. And I say that because last year's budget, when we put it together, the contingency was $26,000. And we were pushing to get that. So the fact that we're at least now have an opportunity to even think about that. Really, reason why I mention this is because at the first workshop and kind of thinking about it, we spent so much time talking about personnel, and again, like I said, rightly so, we didn't kind of get the opportunity to talk about the impact on reserves. We talked about it briefly. We talked about you want to have 3 months, which is kind of an operating reserve. That's not necessarily what you're talking about for capital. So I wanted to make sure we at least touched on that, even if for a couple minutes, to say, hey, look, this is not something we can completely ignore. You have to really be prepared to start building back, especially in, like I said, the general fund. We've seen it every year when the auditor comes. They always make that same comment about your general fund. Luckily this year, again, it's going up, the general fund, so positive, but I didn't want that to get lost in some of the other stuff.
Because with our growth, I just want to make sure that we're going to be able to afford the future.
Okay? No, that's what reserves are. That's also impact fees.
Right.
Impact fees are a big part of that as well. That's intended to cover that growth and that increase. And again, they're looking at grants as well for different things, so, yeah, absolutely, that's important.
Other questions for Stephen before we dive in? Okay, do y'all have any particular place that you would like to start? Or do you want to start at the front of the book? Where do you want to go? Start at the front? All right. So the front would be the budget summary. I think it only changed by the changes that Stephen made. There's really, unless you have any, the transfer to the general fund does show there, as well as the transfer to CalLink, which is on page 2. That's pretty obvious. And that's really all I noted on those 2 pages. Anybody else have comment? I want to ask a question about the budget summary. Yes, sir.
Building permits. How is it that we have this huge amount of building and our building permits reduced over 44%?
Great question. So on the building permits, obviously a large percentage of that cost.
It isn't.
It's not lit up. It's not,
I'm sorry, I was
That's
being
okay.
interrupted.
it's not lit
okay.
up. That's the
I
reason
just
I say
wanted to
it's
pause
not
to make
on.
sure you got your answer.
Testing 1, 2, 3, it is lit. Now,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, a large part of the expenses that go along with the building permits is contracted out, right? So what 70-80% is goes out, you know, you basically pay it out, so you only get a 20% on that. There is no upside to the general fund to budget too much money in building, even if you think you're going to get double that. Because the building fund is supposed to be, that money, it's not supposed to be a profit driving department. So if you're generating that much, you're going to be paying out, let's say you do double it, you're going to be paying out 80% of that anyways. So I always leave it conservative, and this is obviously in conjunction with the staff to see, okay, what do you expect and when do you expect it? So and I do this for all my budgets. I'm always very conservative with revenues that fluctuate year over year. Because this year, like you said, huge numbers. What, 450, the budget was 451,000, and like I said, next year it's down to 250. So it's not an indication of what it will be. It's just an indication of making sure that I'm not pumping up that revenue too much. And you get half of that, now what?
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the budget summary? Okay, I'll move to the staffing plan. And I guess we'll move through the different areas. The city council is not unchanged from what it was even last year. Very, very little change. City administration. Any questions there? That includes the city manager, the HR director, the city clerk, the new administrative, well, not new, but the open administrative position, the IT or the technology manager, the new IT tech, and the logistics manager. Any questions there?
So can you hear me? If we talk about the salaries in this location, is
Yes,
this where
ma'am.
we talk about it?
It is.
Okay. So if we're looking at this and nobody wants to change anything, that means that the proposed rate is the rate that we're going with? Okay. So I guess we need to talk about the HR director's salary. I know last week, well, when we were here before, we wanted to give a raise at this point in time. As I said before, I am against giving a raise simply because the director has not been here for a year. And we really, when we talk about giving raises, we have to look at performance and sustainability. And I don't think that we're at that point at 8 months to really be able to look at that and judge that. And while we're talking about the city administration, when we're looking at raises, I don't believe that the person who is seeking a raise is the person that should be asking for the raise. I believe that is something that should be on the city manager, since these are his subordinates. When we look at raises and start talking about raises, if there's a raise to be given, then it really needs to come from him and the reasoning behind it, not the employee themselves talking about what they feel like they should have. So when we're talking about HR director, I am not for a rate increase at this time. I would entertain us having discussion of maybe a rate increase at their 1-year anniversary based on what the city manager looks at when it comes to evaluation.
I'll just add that from the last budget, her number was 62,000 change. And we lowered it at the last meeting to 55 and change.
So what we did at the last meeting was, because it was slated at 55 from a previous budget, even though that is not her salary, we said that we want to give her that. But once again, there is no evaluation to suggest that she deserves that, right? I mean, I know people have talked about what she has done since she has been here, but there really is no formal evaluation to suggest and show that a raise is warranted at this time, even at the 55 that was budgeted from last year, because obviously I thought that's where she was, but she was not hired in at that rate.
So I got a question.
She was hired in less than 55.
Correct.
55 is what we moved her to at the last meeting.
Right.
Mr. Bullock?
So, but even if we are gonna do the 1 year, like you're suggesting, it still has to be in the budget. Whether it's effective immediately or not, we gotta, even if we're gonna go with that, the city manager making a suggestion, but we gotta have it in the budget for this next year budget, because that will be the 1 year.
Right, I said I would be glad to entertain that conversation, but even if you put the 55 in, that does not suggest that that will be her rate once her anniversary comes. It's still going to be contingent on an evaluation done by the city manager.
And he may choose to do
And
it in
he
6
may
months.
choose to,
Yeah, I mean, he is the city manager. He could do it at 6 months if he wanted to.
what are your thoughts, Terry?
Not to put you on the spot.
Sorry, not to put you on the spot.
I have no problem being put on the spot on any position throughout the city. Feel free to ask me on any one. I will tell you this, although I do respect everybody's position and opinions, I think that, and I give you the short answer or the long answer. The long answer, I think Crystal's done an amazing job since she's been here. There's been a lot of discussion on this matter, both individually between myself and each individual council member, and I respect all of your positions on it. And I believe she's worth the $55,000. When you look back on what she has just accomplished over the last months that she's been here, saving the money on the health insurance, bringing that whole thing together, which was not just a weekly thing. That was a 6-month process where she brought in 3 other companies, one of them being FMIT, our vendor, and successfully negotiated for saving the city $157,000. Big increase. Now, some people say it's part of her job, and I get that, but that is a tremendous thing that she's done on part of the city. She's worked on the performance appraisal evaluations. I think there's really, in this budget, there's only the utility department so far has mentioned anything about giving raises based on performance and merit increases. So I don't know, I mean, how do we start with her? And yet, no other department in the city has done that, except for utility is now suggesting it. So, you know, I would just ask for a parity across the board. You know, we could have brought her in at a higher rate. I've had this discussion with most of y'all, and I chose to bring her at a lower rate because I did not know her. And I can tell you, since we got to know her, she's done an excellent job. Some department heads don't agree with her on some things, but that's her job, is to direct us down the road on the right path. She did an excellent job on managing a very, very sensitive matter brought to the city, and working with one of our labor attorneys, and successfully mitigated that and put us in a position where litigating the city on this matter would be almost impossible. So that's my opinion. I do respect Mrs. Hines' opinion. I absolutely do. We've had discussions about this at length, but if you want my opinion, that's what it is. So.
Well, based on her performance that she's had since she's been here and what she has done and what she has accomplished for the city, my thought is to leave it as it is showing here today.
And we kind of have set a precedence because we have had people in key positions come in, be here 4 or 5 months, budget hits, they get a raise or got a raise. So if you go back and look at last year's budget, things like that. Talking with her today, the things that she's brought in and trying to get different procedures updated and policies, evaluations and all that. So.
Since we brought it down to 55, I'm good with it. I was not good with it before. Knowing what she's done, having talked to the city manager, having seen the $153,000 savings in the health insurance alone, and knowing that he did bring her in at the low end of the pay grade, I'm good with the 55. So I think she's probably worth more than that. But like you said, at the end of the year, we'll know.
I agree.
By this time next year, she may get another hike. So
We'll give
see.
another raise.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion under city administration?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
I know that everybody has been poring over this, and I didn't get it until yesterday. But one thing that I noticed, and I just want to make sure that the council is aware of this, as I'm sure you are. You have the city clerk, a long-term employee, being given $30.81 an hour, and you have the technology manager at $35.74, and if you want to go to the yearly, you had the city clerk total payroll cost at $81,706, and you have the IT manager at $95,915, and the city clerk is a constitutional officer, and I have concerns about that disparity between the two. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have concerns? He did read the total payroll, including retirement and health insurance and all that other. That was not the payroll, the wages that he read from the column. And Ms. Wright, as you know, is one of those who gets hers by our evaluation. So the fact that there's any increase in here right now is a little bit unusual, because it's based on our evaluations. And her evaluation comes up, I believe, in October. So it will be our turn at that point to do whatever we do in October when we actually do her evaluation. The same with the city manager. That's why you see no increase in his line item. Because it's up to us to do those charter officers. That would be my only comment. Anybody else have comment they'd like to add on that or any other section? I don't know if you're talking about one being too low or one being too high, or both. What was your specific
I
comment?
turned it off. I was not commenting
Well, just
that
make it known.
either high or low,
Okay.
just about the difference in the payment being made to people and according to their positions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, you ready to move that area?
No, I agree that that pay rate is a little high as well, as I stated last meeting,
Which one?
the IT.
The IT, okay. So would you like to make a case or make a statement or a suggestion?
So based on what Mr. Mills said last meeting, his increase is based on the things that he has done, you know, with his own personal vehicles. And he did state that he saved us a substantial amount of money related to our colleague services. And I know that he's been doing a lot of work simply because it's just him. He's a one-man department, and we're looking to improve that. I'm just not, and one of his reasons for the increase as to the way it is as well is the fact that he didn't get a raise the previous year. And we kind of spoke about that a little, 2.5 years, I'm sorry, my apologies. 2.5 years, and I asked him the question if in that 2.5 years, did he think that he would have received a raise half that, and he said yes. I'm not sure if that is correct or not. But we're looking at, like a $7 increase in his base pay. And I think that's a little high.
Well, he does,
But that's just
he
me.
hadn't got an increase in 2.5
It's
years,
just me.
and his job is not a 9-to-5 job. If something goes wrong here with the computer system or whatever technical stuff that we have here in City Hall, he's the one that gets, that's called. He's the one that has to do this, whether it's be 3 o'clock in the morning, where it be 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He does a lot of work at his house. He comes in early here to do work, and he does work early at his house that a lot of people are not aware of. And he does work not only for here in the City Hall, but he also does stuff over at the police department as well, and at the airport and other places. Me, since nothing has happened in 2.5 years, and with the hours that he works, and if you wanted to go by hourly, I promise you, you'd be paying a heck of a lot more than this right here. So I'm good with
Are
it.
you hourly or salary? Okay.
I do know I came up here on a Sunday a couple of weeks ago to talk to him, and he was in here working in the flood and rain. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Working." So I do know that on a Sunday.
Did we decide if we were going to give him a vehicle allowance or pay him mileage?
We never did decide that. We
I think-
discussed it, but we
Because if
never settled.
If we get in Mr. Mills, about how many miles a year would you say you put on your vehicle with city work?
In the last 2.5 years, average was about 293 or 283 miles a week.
And if you times that by 55 cents, that's a lot of money.
Well, the mileage rate,
63.5 at the
the
moment.
mileage
Is
rate
it?
changed year to year, and as best I calculated up, it's a little over $20,000.
I'm sure it was 300 miles a week.
283 or
A week
293, I
or
don't
a
remember,
month,
a
that's
week, yes.
lot.
And that's going between where?
Work for
Within
Williston.
within the city? Within the city?
Wherever I have to go for work, yes. In 6 weeks, I've driven that city vehicle that I have now. In 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks of having it, I don't have the number in front of me, but the average was 283 miles a week in 6 weeks.
So
My
you
seventh
are
week.
driving a city vehicle now?
Yes,
That's good to
yes.
know.
And that's within the city, not from home to work?
It's wherever I go for work, whether it's at home to here, on call, coming in on the weekends, going to get parts, or going to Gainesville or Ocala, or whatever the case may be.
So we're paying you to drive from home to come to work? Is anybody else getting paid to drive from home to come to work?
Police officers.
All the police officers.
Okay, he's not a police officer, and that's built in their
No,
package,
you
right?
just asked if there was anybody.
No, it's
No,
not.
police officers are employees of the
If
city.
he's-
So-
If he's salary, then he's not getting paid technically. When he goes to work, he's getting paid by being salary.
So you are driving a city
Okay,
vehicle, you're
so-
driving a city vehicle.
So I asked the
Yes, I
question.
am driving a city vehicle, yes.
Wonderful.
I asked the question, and he gave me an answer. If that is not correct, that's the answer I was given.
Okay.
Okay.
He's not getting paid an hourly rate, but
Right, he's not.
we are paying for the mileage.
Well, he was talking about mileage, so
Yeah,
that's why
that's exactly
I
right.
asked the question.
I agree with you. I think that's what he meant by that. Because he's salaried, so he doesn't get anything extra for the drive time. It's just strictly the vehicle. But now he's driving our vehicle, so, and I assume you're putting gas in at our service pump. Good. That's wonderful. So that kind of solves that problem, Mr. Cox. As long as the vehicle's working.
Well, because I was just going to say, that has a cash value to it.
Right. That's
So
true.
when you talk about a raise, and you look at mileage and what it would cost, doesn't even compare apples to apples.
So what are we gonna do? I need to move, I'm gonna be here all night.
My opinion is leave it as is.
Well, if we did 10% this year, 10% next year, it's going to benefit him.
Tax-wise,
Mr. President,
who is
just a
that?
quick question. If we use our personal vehicles, like I've got a take-home vehicle.
Yes.
If we use our personal vehicles for city business, can't we request reimbursement for mileage?
Depends on your job. Would be my answer.
No, okay, so,
If it's used on city business, I would say that you can request it.
yeah, that's what I would say, and that would go through the department head. The department head would have to approve it, and it'd go back through.
I mean, there shouldn't be any frontline employee who is using their own vehicle.
Correct. I'm just
And I
saying.
don't want to start something and have to put a whole nother pool of things in there. That's starting a whole other can of worms. That's why I answered the question the way I did.
I understand.
And you're right, it would be up to the department head. The department head would have to get approval from the city manager. It's not a good thing to start. So yes, if somebody's doing that, we need to know about it so we can discuss that.
There you go.
That would be my answer to that question. There shouldn't be any employee who's driving their own vehicle.
So, Mr. Wallace,
Mr. Wallace.
yep, our logistic manager.
Yes,
So when he drives to work and then he goes from there, from his office over to some other building for that or to City Hall, that's his own vehicle.
he doesn't have a city vehicle? I mean, if he's just driving around town, I don't see any issue with that.
Well,
He's got a work vehicle?
He's got a work vehicle, I thought. He did. Does he not have it anymore? Or what happened to it? Jason using it? Somebody else is using it? Okay, Jason's using it, so, gotcha. I don't know, whoever is supervising him, I don't know who that is. He may report directly to the city manager.
Tag him in.
Needs to work on that. I don't know. He can drive an electric vehicle if he's just going from here to the barn, for all I care. I mean,
Do they still work?
as far as I know, they do. Yeah, there's two, I think two at the airport still work. And they bought batteries, I've seen. Do what now? I don't know either, you need to find it. When did you loan it, to who?
loaned it to Laura, and you want it back?
I've never seen it. I've never used it before.
The plight of the missing golf cart.
Okay, so y'all, somebody help the chief find his golf
We'll
cart.
find a golf cart. It's not
Help the
hard
chief
to-
find his golf cart.
Yeah.
All right, so, and like I said, we do have vehicles, if Mr. Wallace needs to have transportation, we can line him up with an electric vehicle. I don't know how many of those are still working, I didn't know we were having trouble with them. I know we bought some new batteries, because I've seen the bills come through, so I did not realize that was an issue. So, we're back to the technology manager. Are we gonna leave it? Are we gonna do it in a two-step like Mr. Cox suggested, or are we gonna lower it altogether? Well, let's do something.
No, leave it.
I'm good if he ain't had a raise in the 2.5 years or whatever it is, then, I mean, I don't think he's too far off of where he would be.
Okay? All right, so I'm going to community development. I have a,
you decide? Because I don't understand.
To leave it alone.
everybody I heard said leave it alone,
Okay, so that was.
except for Ms. Hines, and I'm sort of halfway
So
myself.
you already know how I feel, so.
Counselor Cox was talking about a different method. I'm just-
He did talk about a different method. He said 10% this year, of this amount, he said 10% this year, 10% next year, rather than all at once. That
But
was,
that was based on one specific person, right? That was for the.
that was for Mr. Mills.
Logistic.
He was talking about Mr. Mills.
Oh, I thought he was talking about the logistics
So
manager.
Counselor Cox, did you agree to leave it as is?
No.
Thank you.
So were you talking about logistics?
But we have
Which
consensus.
is Wallace?
I'm not debating that.
Evidently you are.
No, it's for Mr. Mills. I
Oh,
just
you were
brought it
speaking of
up
Mr. Mills, okay.
because they were talking about personal vehicles. We shouldn't be using them if they're on city business within the
Right.
city.
He made that comment about
So I
Mr.
just made
Mills,
the
and then he
comment
went
with
to
Mr. Wallace.
about the car vehicle,
So, that's
Oh,
all.
okay.
the car issue. All right. All right, so I guess I'm gonna ask for consensus, since there are people who don't think we have the majority in one way or the other.
Leave it.
Leave it.
I told you what I thought.
Okay, you think 10% this year,
it'll actually
10%
benefit.
of this increase this year and 10% again next year?
I'm just afraid we're gonna be so top-heavy on payroll. That's just my thought, when looking at everything here. Not trying to be disrespectful for anybody or
Right.
to anybody or anything like that. Just I'm afraid we're gonna be top-heavy. And last year, we started into this thing of granting $12 an hour raises.
Okay,
And you're headed right back to the same
And the
way.
president's being set that we're giving big raises.
So then people come in and ask for big raises.
so Ms. Hines, will you go along with his 10% this year, 10% next year?
Yeah.
Okay, I will do that too, that makes 3. The rest of you okay if we do that?
No?
Looks like it's 3, so, it is what it is. Is Mr. Mills okay with it? Is everything else? I don't know how that works.
I'll go back to the president's statement, I need to turn in my mileage.
Not if you're driving a vehicle that's ours.
I'm talking about the 2.5 years, I didn't get paid for using it.
Should have brought it up before now, that's the way I can say it.
I don't think there's a statute of limitations on that.
I'd say it's something you did and didn't tell us, so I don't know I cannot answer that question. We're talking about a raise at the moment, we're not talking about your mileage. So the increased amount, I don't know what it was before because this particular page doesn't tell me, Mr. Bloom. I know that it's a different page that has the dollar amount that I have here.
Are you looking for 10% of where it is
The
currently?
difference between what he asked, what the current amount is and what he asked for. So the
Okay.
the 3574 is what he asked for.
Right, and the 2874 is the current rate.
2874 is the current rate. Well, that's the dollar amount, yeah, okay. I'm thinking the whole yearly annual cert,
Okay.
but it amounts to the same thing.
I can give that to you here. So the current rate, do you want, how exact you want it? It's 59,769 is current. And then you have what it would be under his current request. And if you're looking for what 10% of that is.
10% of the difference. I mean, half this year, half next year. That's
Okay,
what,
which is 12.2%.
okay. So 12.2 or 10?
Well, right now, it's 24.4 is the
Is the increase. 24%
So
increase.
if you say 12% for,
I'm thinking
That's-
half and half.
right,
I
so it's
don't know if
12.
that's what the other two people are thinking.
Well, I heard 10, so
Me too.
if it's,
If it's 12.5, then.
so 12, let's just say 12.5. That's 67,240.
Okay, so that's an $8,000 raise. I think that's a good raise, knowing you're going to get the same thing next year.
Well, the 12.5 will
It's
be more
actually
next year because they're going to
7,500.
do it based off of what
Compounded.
he's making next
Yeah.
year plus 12.5.
Right. I think that's very fair.
Yeah, because next year he'll actually make more.
Based on what he's already got this year.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Great point.
That would be next year 75,646.
Yeah. I think that's a good step to get him where he wants to be. Are you ready to move to the next person?
Yes.
I am for sure. And we have two other chances to look at it. So we'll see it in the next budget, and we can look at it again next time.
Yep, so it's a great point. Let me just for everyone so they know, what I will do is I will make that adjustment and move the money to contingency. Therefore, if you were to still want to make any changes at the next one, we have that money, it doesn't disappear.
You're so good at that.
Making sure it doesn't disappear,
Terrific.
right? Just to be clear.
Yes, sir.
So basically, what he's gonna be getting is a $3.50 increase in his hourly salary, correct?
Divided by 359.
Okay, we're moving to community development. I have all check marks. How about y'all?
Madam President, one thing.
Yes, sir.
So Stephen, there's obviously indication of open positions here which have been filled, so I will get with you.
Absolutely.
And let you know who those are. There's no additional staff than what's already on here, but where you see like an open position, there are people we've hired.
Cool. That's wonderful. So have you hired an IT tech?
No, because we have
No.
to bring that to y'all for approval.
Okay,
So, but we have hired a permanent tech and an animal shelter assistant or
Sure.
attendant.
okay.
No?
Sorry. The permanent tech position's been filled, and that person will start in the next week or so.
I cannot,
I cannot hear you.
it is lit up, but it's not very loud.
So the animal shelter we have
permit-
not, but the kennel tech,
Right,
Yeah.
so the kennel tech position has been filled, but the animal shelter attendant is not to be filled in the near future.
All right, so that one's
That's just
still
there as a holding in case we get that busy.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. All right, we move then to customer service billing and customer service billing and accounts payable. This is the first one where you see no raises indicated, where they have the pool of dollars. There is a page in here, I cannot remember which one it is, that has the amount of the pool that is indicated for the section.
That's correct.
Is it in the supplemental schedules? Is that where it is?
No,
Can't remember where I
It's
saw
at the
it.
very end of the adjustments. It's page 12.
Page 12 of this same section?
At the very bottom, last piece there, you see by department.
Gotcha. Okay. So you'll see the customer service department, they have allocated $14,560 for 4 people. Again, we haven't approved this method yet. And we had discussion at the last meeting about whether we would hold it up until we did. We just kind of need to, I don't know if y'all remember all that. discussion. But this is the first department we've gotten to tonight that has that in it. So this is where we need to, I guess, have a discussion about it, just in general.
Where you at?
Where am I? I'm on page 7, under customer service, billing, and accounts payable. And then you can see the amount of the pool of money they have earmarked for that department on page 12, at the bottom of the page.
So a question I do have is, Stephen, on page 54, it shows 16,732,
That's the total amount.
right? So is this the actual dollar per hour minus benefits?
That is correct. That is truly, I think I put a note, did I?
You
I
may
think
have.
that's
I
also
did,
about
yeah, I
it.
put a note. Yeah, if you look at the very bottom of there, there, I added the tax and benefits to it as well.
Yeah,
Up
if you go to the
to-
bottom, page 12 shows the taxes and benefits at the very bottom.
But the department itself, when you
Right.
look at a department level, it's an all-in number for you.
Right.
Who's going to determine the amount for each one?
Well, we talked about the evaluation that was handed to us at the last meeting. It hasn't been approved yet, and the policy exists, but the procedure doesn't really, so that's what we would have to approve. The policy is in the HR manual. Ms. Crystal read that to us at the last meeting. So the procedure, which is the development of her evaluation and how that would be done by the department heads, is something we would have to approve before we could start using it, I assume.
Is that going to be done by October 1?
It can be. I already have the evaluation updated itself, and I have a full draft to present and a procedure to present. So, and I can do that at the next.
Will the evaluations be completed by then?
No, sir. The evaluations would, the proposal to do the evaluations would be to do them yearly, not all at one time.
Yeah, that's another thing we have to decide about. Right now, on October 1st, everybody's getting a raise. That's the way we've done it for quite a while.
So the
How-
proposal would be just to implement the yearly evaluations beginning October 1st.
Yeah, the proposal is to go to their hire date and do it as of their hire date. So if somebody just had their hire date, in other words, they're in September, it'll be
Minus
next year before
a
it's done.
grace period too, I thought, that,
We talked about a grace period, we
Yeah.
never decided anything.
So bottom line, that $77,212, including the utility and whatnot, that's just going to sit in a pot until the evaluations are completed on their hire date, if it is approved to do it this way.
Well, if you think about it, everybody got a raise in October at the beginning of the fiscal year, last year, right? Which carries over for a year. So basically, at each individual hire date, they've already gotten paid prior to their actual hire date. So if you start now and go to the hire date, then
That's
they
not-
will actually,
That's not the case. They all got it on October 1st. They may have had a hire date in June.
I know, that's what I said.
Well, it's not exactly what you said. In June, they
I
did
didn't
not,
finish.
in June, they didn't
Because
get
you
another one.
interrupted me.
Wow.
But go ahead.
It's because it was a misstatement. I'm sorry. Go ahead, say it again. I mean, everybody else agreed with the statement that,
What I said was, last year in October, because whenever our budget was released and everybody got their raise, right?
October 1st.
Right, so it goes for the full year, correct? So if I got a raise in October, my hire date was in January. I got that raise in October, so essentially it could be construed as for January. Why are you shaking your head no?
No,
Because
because the raise that they got last year on October 1 basically ends on this October 1. And they would get the increases out of this pool
So-
on their hire date after October 1 of this year.
So you're saying that the raise that they got last year was for last year?
Yeah, from October 1,
It
22
was for
to
this year.
October 1, 23.
Correct, it was for this year.
but they won't get anything
Now,
again. And what if I'm saying their anniversary is September 1st. They won't get a raise for a whole year, another year.
So if their Anniversary date is January. They got a raise.
Now, if their anniversary date is, say, January 2024, then that's when their evaluation will be done, and that's when they will get their raise.
And they'll miss 3 months' worth of those raised dollars. But if it's in September, they're going to miss 11 months' worth of those raised dollars for this year. So they're essentially a year behind.
So I get what you're saying. So what I'm saying is you're paying across the board at the beginning of the fiscal year for that year coming in, right? Regardless of when they were hired.
That's the way we've done it for years and years. And then, as Mr. Fuller said at our last meeting, that's the way UF has always done it.
Yeah.
That's the way
I
I'm
understand
used to
that's
it.
the way it was done. I'm not disputing how it was done. I was just trying to explain when you talk about going to the yearly as opposed to staying at a straight annual or, beginning of fiscal year raise.
Then a lot of people are going to miss their raise for months.
I think the first year, it's just going to be rough, and it's going to really be that second year where everything smooths out.
Oh, obviously.
Would that be
No,
correct?
sir.
Ms.
There can be
I
a
don't
formula,
think
there
they're
can be a
listening.
formula to prorate, once you implement it in October 1st and you start looking at people's anniversaries and when they got that October raise of last year, there is a formula that can be created to prorate when they're, in order to at least get through the first year and make sure that it's fair for all those breaking into this new process. So it can be done.
Mr. Fuller, if you will, come to the podium.
I think we're rushing it. This year, we're not prepared to give raises in that manner. You can give evaluations in that manner, and those evaluations will indicate what they get the coming year. But right now, this council and this city is not ready to give raises based on evaluations. In fact, you truly don't know whether the evaluations will be done by then and done correctly. So why not wait a year rather than rushing what you're trying to do and not get it done correctly?
Yeah, the only way I would want to do it is if we retroactive back what they would have gotten paid the first year. That's the way I would do it if we were going to do it. In other words, if let's say their anniversary was in January, and they missed the October, November, December, I would want to give them the 3 years retro rather than holding it for 3 months and then going forward the first year. That's the way I'd want to do it. I saw a hand out here other than Albert's, I think. Did I not? Maybe it was Albert's that I saw. Okay. Mr. Bavard,
Thank you, Madam President.
please.
So, I kind of go back and forth on this topic. I mean, I do believe the evaluation, I do believe the current evaluation that we have could be done between now and October 1. The question is that the evaluation we want? Which is another whole different topic. I think being very respectful of Mr. Fuller's comments that getting them done probably at least 1 year, and then maybe doing a trial run and figuring out where we fall, what kind of the numbers we have, where does each individual employee get their pay raise, what that pay raise is going to be is really kind of the plan, do, check, act philosophy that I like when we do PDCA and getting an idea, are we doing the right thing here? I know that throws a wrench in everybody's idea of what they want to do. I know it goes in contrast to what I said about utilities being the only one that wanted to do performance appraisal evaluations. I applaud them for that. I love the idea that they want to do it. In addition to that, we also have a union that we have to deal with. There are some conditions that they've laid out in reference to performance appraisal, evaluation, and merit increases and how they can be grieved. That, although I anticipate, I will counter back to whatever their position would be to eliminate that, and they may walk away from it. where it'd be agreed by a third party. But you'd have to understand if they take a position on that and hold the line, that's simply something I could never agree to, nor would I recommend the council agree to. So there's a lot at stake here. And I have no doubt that they can do the evaluations in a timely fashion. I have no doubt that we have an evaluation in place. My question is this the evaluation that this city wants to use? Regardless of when we implement it or what day we implement it on, is it the one that we want to use for every position throughout the city? And then, to be quite frankly, is if it is a way the city wants to go, we should implement this process citywide and mandate all departments do performance appraisal evaluations and base those increases based on those performances. So I think everybody has a lot of great ideas here. I think the question is timing, is the only thing that concerns me. The utilities department has assured me that they believe they have put enough money in it. But to be honest with you, I agree with Mr. Fuller that if I went through the process and did a trial run, I would feel a lot better, understanding if we actually did have this amount of money. My 2 cents.
I agree. I think whatever evaluation we use, whether it's this one or another one, and I can tell you one of the things I least like about it is the fact that it has a 6-point system instead of a 5. And that's just me. I'm used to a 3 or a 5 and not a 6. The 6 is kind of odd to me. And I read it in depth more than once. And it's still not job specific.
Enough
For me. That's exactly the way I feel, enough. It could be, you can tweak it a little maybe, there's a supplemental page you could put in specific to a job, but right now, the same one for this person as it is for that person and this person. It's not job specific to me at all. And some people it fits better than others, so, in my opinion. So I think a trial run would be wonderful if we did it for a year, saw what kind of raise we would have given based on the scores that are received, so we know exactly how much money to put in the pool, rather than not giving people a raise because we ran out of money in that area. I don't know.
I definitely, being somebody that's been on the other end of a shovel, I know what it's like to see people get raises that ain't working as hard. I know the reasoning for it, and I didn't like when other people got the same raise as me that didn't put forth what I was putting forth. Is there a way that y'all could take the same pool of money and go to the city manager with recommendations and just do y'all's own thing as the bosses and say, we're going to give this guy a 1.5 instead of a $1 raise across the board, and let the other people see that this guy did get 50 cents more than the other guy got, and explain to, if they have questions, why? I mean, is that something we can do that we haven't been doing in the past?
I think if over the last year, this administration had documented properly those ups and downs, those positive things the employees done, those negative things the employees done, probably had done some goals and objectives, some strengths and weaknesses that were in their personnel file that would absolutely hold up if we got challenged, then yes, I will tell you that has not been done.
The current evaluation, it sort of has goals and objectives, but it doesn't call them that. It's not as specific as I would like for it to be, and I would like those goals and objectives to be set by the manager and the employee.
That's what the last section is for. And it states that those goals and objectives gets listed in that section. So it's right after you get done with asking all the specific questions that are geared toward any position actually. But when you get to the very end of it, there is a section that reads and requires the supervisor to put in any licenses, certifications, and then the goals and objectives for the next year.
But not everybody has licenses and certifications.
No.
But it's just a statement.
Yeah, I know it's just a statement, but. it
Correct,
kind of-
but it also says, like I
cuts the
say,
other
it's
people.
in general to list any educational points that, they may need to reach. Most people have some certifications that they've received in all of the positions, including clerical. So it's not specifically asking for a degree, but it is it does give a general statement of licenses, certifications, any types of education that they've acquired during that time. So it does give a section for you to address that.
But there may be goals and objectives that are not licenses and certifications. Mr.
Correct,
Fuller.
and you can list them there, whatever it is that's different.
Mr. Fuller. I see you, Laura.
You're making the argument for starting next year, not this year, because they have no goals or objectives that have been written down. So what do you hold them to, and how do you do that evaluation? Now, if they set those goals this year, then you're prepared for an evaluation system. But if there's no goals, how do you know whether you reached them?
Excellent point. Ms. Jones, I see you next. Oh, you playing with your hair? You're so funny. Ms. Patterson.
A lot of the staff already does have goals and objectives in place. Certifications, education, extra training in their position in itself. So there are many goals that are already set in place. And regardless of whether we started October 1st of this year or October 1st of next year, you got to have a starting point. I do think that a trial run is not a bad idea, just to get it into play. There is a specific way to get the evaluations into the supervisor's hands, get them set up in a schedule, and create that tickler that is basically popping up in their calendar to let them know when a person's anniversary is coming up. And then that will give them the opportunity throughout that year. They can already go back into the person's file, and you cannot do an evaluation without reviewing somebody's file to begin with. So you already have a starting point. You already have their current file. You already have what's happened in that file the last year. So you have already a lot of things in place for this evaluation. It's just a matter of starting it.
The problem I'm seeing here with all this evaluation and all you're talking about having to bring it here, get it approved, to get it started, to move on and whatnot here, I think we're forgetting one thing here. We've got a lot of employees right here in this budget right now that's going to get an increase as of October the 1. You've got several employees that's in this pot here that you're talking about. They're getting nothing here. And I do not think that's right. I do not think that is fair. If you're going to do that, then we need to give these people something on this budget year, and then we take this evaluation process and whatnot and peak it and get it going so that we can have it and do it for the next budget year.
You're absolutely
But to leave these ladies and gentlemen out and these employees out of not getting anything where other employees are getting something is all wrong.
Well, it wouldn't be the case, sir. It would not be the case of somebody not getting anything and somebody getting more. That's why I say there is a way to create a formula. When you look.
But you're having to backtrack and give that formula. You're having to backtrack and catch up with that. Is that not correct?
No, sir. So what you would do.
So you're going to give employees a raise, these employees a raise as of October the 1?
No, it depends on what you decide. I mean, I would have to create a
No,
formula.
with the system that you're talking about.
No, she wants to do the data hire.
So,
I
yeah.
know that. That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
So if you decided to do a raise across the board right now, and we implement on October the 1st, if you decided to do something straight across October 1st and give everybody a raise, then you would start the evaluation, say we gave somebody a raise in October 1st and their anniversary was September. They obviously would not get a raise because they just got one. So you would do a prorated type formula. And I don't have it off the
Is
top
that
of my
based
head,
on
but
these evaluations and whatnot?
Next year's September? Is that what you're talking about?
If they did September, if we put raises across the board and somebody's evaluation came up September this year,
Oh,
you
well, they don't
wouldn't
get it till October, so it doesn't matter anyway.
October, September, October, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, November,
Yeah.
not September, I apologize. November, say their evaluation came up in November, you obviously would not give them a raise because they just got one in October. So say you move in someplace and they prorate your rent in the middle of the month.
Right.
It's a prorated formula that you would create,
Well-
and give them a small part of what they would have gotten.
Well, I'm with Mr. Bullock. I think it was Mr. Bullock that said, let's do the evaluations now. Mr. Fuller says, set the goals and objectives now. Give them all a raise October 1st, and next year, when on their anniversary, you can start phasing it in.
So you want the supervisors to do all of their evaluations right now?
I think what,
Yes.
yeah,
That's what-
this is what let me help out here. This is what I think should happen, is that I think if the council decides, look, we want to implement some sort of performance appraisal evaluation, then tell us that's what you want us to do. We will, I don't know that we have the best document. We probably do. I'm not saying we don't. I've met some people from DeLand that had a pretty good document. I would like to reach out and talk to them a little bit. I would love to do the thing like Mr. Fuller said. I said that at the last meeting, do a trial run. But before that, come back with you with a document that y'all go, yes, we like this. We can all agree to this one document. And then this year, we do performance appraisal evaluations. I say at the beginning of the year,
Bless you.
give everybody their goals and objectives, talk about their strengths and weaknesses, identify areas of needing improvement. We set out what kind of training we think they need. We make sure that they get that training. And then basically evaluate them in their process from what we know from them now. Next year, if you want to do all the evaluations prior to September, yes, they can be done on the anniversary date. Yes, there is a particular process that does work. Other agencies have done that. But I think giving everybody the right pay raise on October 1, next year based on a performance appraisal evaluation that's been proven and works, and the employees had one whole year to correct any deficiencies they have. And Mr. Fuller is correct when he says, how do I know what my deficiencies are if they have not been identified on paper and shown to me, and some sort of corrective measure has taken place to solve that problem? We don't know if it's the training issue. We don't know if it's a discipline issue. It's just biting off one big part of the elephant in the room that's probably too much to chew to try it this year, which is what I said earlier. So I don't feel comfortable doing it. I would rather much do it with a trial run. Maybe we'll get it wrong. And what if we get it wrong? And then I can change that process and try it again. And we may evaluate everybody the very next month. There aren't that many employees. We have plenty of supervisors. I mean, I'm going to do every department heads. Department heads will do the supervisors below them. The supervisors below them will do the staff below them, all signed off by me. So it would go, as an example, would be Chip's sitting out there. Chip, whoever Chip supervisor would do his. It would go to the next level supervisor, which would provide his comments. He may not agree with it. He may add something else. It would then go to the utilities director. He would add his comments. And then it would come to me for final approval, and I may add my comments. I may disagree with all of them and add something new. So I think we have a lot to do here.
Does everybody agree with that method?
Yes, I think we need to basically do the exact thing. I would like to see, though, the test run brought to us pretty quick where we can get an idea of what that 77,000, how it would have looked distributed. Not
could
how
do
it
that.
is distributed,
that's-
but how it would have looked
Right,
distributed.
once they're done. Collect the numbers and see what the dollars would come to and see if okay, so our next question is what are we going to do this year for dollars for all these people who have no raise? They have a pool of money that is
I like
shown on
that.
page 12. Do you want the supervisor and the city manager to go and come back with a dollar amount for each of those people for us, using the money that is already in the budget that's allocated for that area?
That's what I would prefer, is if there's a guy they feel like is worth more than $1, then I think they need to bring his case forward for more than $1. If there's a guy worth under $1, then I think it needs to come to us for under $1, or if he's a new guy or whatever, but, instead of across the board. But that puts pressure possibly on them to judge their employees, but I don't know, that's everywhere I've
But
worked,
they
that's kind
would
of how life
recommend,
is.
and I agree 100% with what Darvin has said earlier, that the employee doesn't need to be asking for their own
Right.
dollar amount of raise. I do believe their supervisors need to be bringing us that amount, and I think in a lot of places they are, but the department heads, I believe they all need to be brought to us from management, from
Agreed
the
with
city
that.
manager. I agree 100%. I had never thought about that before. That was the first thing you said tonight, and I agree 100%.
Totally
So
agree.
What about the department heads that aren't under the city manager? Who bring them?
There aren't many of those.
There's only two departments.
They bring their own,
Okay.
I would
so
assume.
they
They
bring
have,
their own?
or the mayor brings them on their behalf. I mean, they can make recommendations to the mayor, which is what they're doing now, and then the mayor can present it on their behalf.
And whether or not we agree with it.
But I believe that they're done already. We're not talking about them. Their raises are in there now. Is this these that were listed? I think there's, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, it's over here, 5 areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 areas, 20, there's 26 people that we're talking about that are in this pool of $77,212. So, and it's divided up, use the same amount of money, I would think, and y'all bring us back a recommendation in the next budget. We don't need to see it before the next budget, but in the next budget, bring us those recommendations. You know who needs it a
We
whole
can
lot
do
better
that.
than we do. And I don't want to give it across the board, because in looking at these people, I see there are some people who are really good. And I think they need, and some of them are the supervisors. And they need to be, y'all need to decide, because you know your people.
So, did you say that the employees tell them what they want to make? Did I understand you say that
No.
correct?
No.
No.
Okay, because it came out
Right
that
now,
way?
there are department heads who told us what they wanted.
Okay, yes.
And I think that department heads' salary recommendations need to be made by the city manager. I think that's, like I said, a wonderful thing, that they should never tell us themselves what they want. Mr. Stiegel.
Yes, ma'am. Just playing devil's advocate for just a
I
second.
knew you would. Go ahead.
Let's say that a supervisor comes to the city manager or their department head and say, hey, I believe that this guy is worth way more than this guy, right? For a raise. Let's say that this person A is worth $2 an hour more than person B is worth. When that raise happens, if and when that raise happens, and person B is not content with that, what legal justification do we have to back up the fact that we gave this person a raise over that person?
It's pretty much no different than it is now. Y'all walked in here with numbers, and we have no idea how you chose those numbers.
Right, but the
At least this time,
argument for
they
that
will
would
have
be
had a discussion about it,
well, the argument for that would be a performance evaluation.
but there is not one. There's not one. That's the whole problem.
Ms. Patterson, can you email out the proposed evaluation to all of us so we all can see it?
Yes, it's been updated, yeah, it's been updated.
Okay,
And
she gave it to us at the last budget hearing.
that was a very extremely rough draft.
Well, that's all I got.
Well, I know,
And the first
but
time I had
it was
seen
just
it,
part
yeah.
of the package to tell you of some of the things that I've worked on and some of the things that I've done and was working toward
I thought
as
it was your
far as.
proposal.
I'm sorry?
I thought it was the one you were proposing.
No.
What else would I think?
Well, the front of my,
I'm glad
my
it's
cover
not.
page explained it.
I'm glad
so,
it's not, because I
yeah.
don't like it, so that's good.
Okay, so, so I can update the one. It was never written in stone, and that was clarified that it was not written in stone. It was a draft to
Oh, yeah,
go by.
I knew it was a draft, yeah.
It was not being proposed for you to approve it in any way, shape, or form. When I was interviewed, I was tasked with creating that. That was one of the many things that was discussed with me. Can I create and update performance evaluation. It was on my list of tasks to do. And so that's what I did. I just updated that. Now, I do have a current one, like I say, that was completely updated with percentages and some clearing of verbiage. But it's not written in stone. Like I say, there are things that can be added or deleted or however it needs to be adjusted. But it is a coverall, just about, with maybe a few tweaks to it. But yes, I can email it to all of you.
And then we can make notes, what we like or didn't like.
Correct.
And discuss it at a council meeting.
That was
And then
the
go
whole
from
point of
there.
it. And also to get supervisors' inputs of what they would like to see on it. It was the start of it.
Right.
It wasn't the proposed.
Okay,
It was in the cover page.
then I wasted my time looking at it twice.
Okay.
Chief Rolls.
I hear the evaluation process y'all wanting to use the evaluation process, but what we have to keep in mind, like the city manager said, there's different areas, and our evaluations will be more job-specific versus the ones that will be used by the city.
I think they all need to be related to the job description.
Yes.
If we don't have job descriptions, that's the first place we should start.
Yeah, we've currently created that.
Yeah.
So we have an evaluation that's more job-specific for our area, so.
Maybe we need to use yours and make it job specific.
Yes.
Unless every employee has a job description, they don't know what to do. If we don't have job descriptions, that's the first place we need to start. And then base each individual evaluation off of their job description.
Correct.
That's the way I'm used to it being. So,
Yeah, and then everything that I've ever done in the past, you had an employee evaluation and a supervisor's evaluation. That was it. All the employees got the same evaluation.
you mean like a self-evaluation? Is that
Well-
what you mean? No?
No, just a regular
Oh, you mean two
one.
different ones, one for
Right.
supervisors and one for line employees?
It wasn't one for this group, that group, or anything like that. It's just two things. It's a simple process. It's a simple document.
Yeah.
I think we're just complicating it.
Madam President, I will say this, I do believe there's probably enough information in the personnel files that we can make a pretty solid determination on pay raises.
Yes, I would think so.
I would hope so.
And you know the job performance because you guys have been doing it, or been working with them for the last year. So whether we have an evaluation, you know their job performance, and like you said, their files should reflect it.
Unless the city attorney's going to tell me differently. No, I think he's good.
And we'll go back to one of your very first statements that has to do with the union. In all honesty, we shouldn't even be talking about raises because of the union. They have not made us a proposal.
Yes, and that affects every employee that works for the city of Williston, regardless of department,
Yeah,
if they're non-exempt.
right. So we're doing it anyway, at least at this point. But, it may get to the point where we can't. It depends on the union itself. If they tell us that we can't, then we will have to stop until they give us a proposal. So,
If they suggest that we shouldn't.
yes, if they suggest, then make a decision. Then that would be the stop. Okay, so do y'all all sort of agree with that, where we're going with that? And that we're going to look at least one evaluation, and the city manager says he has a couple of other examples he might want us to look at as well. All right, so I don't even know where we are. We're still in the staffing plan.
Yes, we were on page 6.
Page 6. Oh my heavens, we have not gotten far. This is ridiculous. No, I'm not on page 6. Where are you on page 6?
I thought we were at community development and then on to customer service, because I made the comment.
I'm on page 8, which is
Ooh,
is
okay.
the police department.
I like it.
I quit on everybody else because they're the pooled group. When you get to the pooled group, that's where we left off. Y'all are going to take their 14,000, however much,
I've got
dollars.
6 and 7 side by side, so I just picked
Oh,
the
oh.
number.
Oh. Yeah, 6 is a totally different thing. Like 6 is in a different section, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so in customer service billing, accounts payable, y'all are gonna go to the $14,400 or however much it is and look at those 4 people, give Stephen numbers for each employee and plug it in. So when we see it next, they'll be there. So between Selena and the city manager, y'all are gonna do that. If we move to the police department, which is next, anybody have any comment at all about the police department? You do see that one of the open positions now has a name in it. Other than that, I don't think there's any question that I had. Chief Rolls.
And I'll direct it to the city manager to find out if he has a contact with the school board, so we can look at making the adjustments to the crossing guard salary. I don't know if you have a contact with the school
Yeah,
board.
we have a contract on that, so.
I think it's yearly, but I don't know when it
Is
starts.
it yearly?
Well, the reason that I say that, sorry,
Go ahead.
is there's a difference of $4,156 that we would cover versus what the
School board's paying.
Right. Yeah.
And that's his sole duty is what he gets paid for.
Yeah.
I remember last year we paid him more than they gave us.
Yes.
I want to say by $1.
Okay, okay. We was just trying to make that up.
I think last year we actually called them to talk to them about the fact that the wage increase went up,
Right.
you know, by what am I trying to say, yeah, it went up $1 and we had to, minimum wage, thank you. The minimum wage went up and they needed to change their contract because of that, and they did. And I think we still paid $1 more last year than what their contract was.
And I can get with the city manager and Miss Latricia and get the contract so we can make contact with them and renegotiate that again.
Because theirs is probably $12.
Yeah, probably.
And ours was
I think that's what it
13.
was. I think it was $12.
So if theirs doesn't go to 13, ours will, it'll be $2, you're right, exactly. I actually have it highlighted right there, but, yeah. I
Okay.
think we did that anyway, because he doesn't work many hours.
No.
850, that's not many. All right, so if there's any change there, y'all let Mr. Bloom know. One more time, gone, Mr. Mayor.
I need to direct your attention to page 11, the salary adjustments listed by department position, and compare it to the staffing plan listed by Department of the Police Department on page 8. There are two different numbers here for Captain Fortney and the Public Safety Administrator. The numbers do not match.
The chief doesn't match either.
Mayor, we've already talked about that.
We haven't talked about it.
Yes, sir.
Is that your salary incentive?
No,
So what is the correct number? Is it on page 8?
Yes, page 8 is the correct number.
So does that then, that affects the percentage on page 11?
Yes, that's all. The page 11 is just an extra report that I put together. I'll get them linked up for the next version, but it won't affect the budget.
Right, but it does affect the percentage perception, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, sir. I noticed that too as well. I have highlighted. Okay. So anything else on the police department? Going. All right, we're moving to the fire department. Anything on the fire department? All is well at the fire department? All right. Then, if we're not doing anything with the fire department, we're moving to the Utilities Public Works Administration. We had questions about these last time. Mr. Bishop is here with us this time. At this point, I know Mr. Bishop is salaried. We've asked Mr. Barber to go salaried, but he hasn't necessarily said he would yet.
I thought last meeting he was proposing salary.
He was, at the rate of pay he gave us. So if we change that rate of pay, I don't know what's going to happen. So I can tell you, I might as well start. I have an issue with both of those. I think it's too much of a jump. And I know we heard at the last meeting why there was such a jump. And we heard a lot about overtime. But I have a lot of problem with them increasing as fast as they are.
And I agree.
And if you want me to throw numbers out, I can. Just whatever you want me to do here.
Go for it.
All right, Mr. Bishop's current salary is $65,250, and the proposal at our last meeting was $88,762. That's an increase from $31 to $42,65. Mr. Barber is currently at $49,192 with 1,000 hours a year we heard at the last meeting of overtime, so that would be at time and a half. And his proposal is $74,000, which is an increase from $23,65 to $35,65. As you heard, he's willing to go salaried if we give him that increase. Our question is, what do we think about that? It's a lot at one time.
I'll start. I don't agree with the increase as I previously stated. And if him going salary is contingent upon that rate, then he can say hourly. But then his overtime needs to be looked at. It needs to be managed. When he's working throughout the day, there needs to be some time management skills being utilized. And that may be something that we look into a class for all of our department heads, or even everybody in general, the ability to know how to use their time more appropriately and wisely. The hours of overtime are a lot, and you expressed concern with his health related to that. At no point should anybody's overtime be as much as their base pay.
Right. Exactly.
So that needs to be addressed, definitely. Yeah, I can't go with an increase rate of that amount.
Anybody else, or a dollar figure?
I agree.
Have you two gentlemen given it? Yeah, I know Mr. Robert was here at our last meeting and heard how we felt about it. Mr. Bishop was not here. And when I asked the question, who plugged this number in for him, because I knew he did not. And I was told that he did not. So I'm here asking, as the supervisor, what do you think? I know that's a tough question here, sitting in front of all your people. But I really kind of need to know how you feel about it.
At the end of the day, we work for the will of the council, but I believe one of us deserves an increase.
Okay?
10% this year, next year. Because it Again, it's top end heavy.
And I think going 10% this year and then next year, that may not be as feasible as well. That's a large increase. And we're talking about increasing, I don't know if it's one, I know if it's both. I know last session, we talked about increasing one, but only giving a slight increase to the other, which would make the pay rate really, really close to each other. So when we look at increasing rates, regardless of what it may be, it still needs to have that boundary or division between titles.
I agree. So what do you, I'm just throwing a number out here, just to give us a place to start. Mr. Bishop's currently, and I hate to do this in public, that's what I hate the most about the Sunshine Law, is having to do this in public. Y'all have heard me say that 100 times. And I will say both of you deserve a raise. I won't say that you don't. I know you both work hard. You both are on top of what's going on, and you spend many hours out there doing what you do with your men, and your women, for that matter. If we moved Mr. Bishop from 65 to 50 to 70, and we moved Mr. Barber to 68, I would feel comfortable with that. And just throw something else out there if you don't agree with that.
Could you repeat what you?
Mr. Bishop is currently 65 to 50. Instead of moving him to 88, I'm suggesting we move him to 70. Mr. Barber is currently at 49. Instead of moving him to 74, I'm suggesting 68,000.
Which is a difference of $2,000 between the two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that. I don't agree with that. Simply because there is still no good space between the two related to salary. Why place Mr. Barber at 68 and that's going up what?
Because I want him to be
11?
salaried. And I think we'll save money if we make him salaried. And I don't think he'll go salaried he may not even go salaried for 68, but I don't think he'll even consider going salaried for less than 68. That's just my opinion. Haven't talked to Mr. Barber about it.
But you're not increasing the rates equally.
I don't have to.
I know, you don't have to, but I'm just saying you're not increasing them equally. And because it's salary, that should not be a distinction just specifically. Are we looking at giving him a raise simply because the amount of money that he made in the previous years, we want to make sure it's kind of comparable to what he's going to go into? Because his base salary was 49. Yes, he did have a lot of overtime, but his lifestyle may have been related to that overtime. But when you're looking at lifestyle per se,
It's called a bunch of kids.
then you really have to look at your base salary because overtime is not guaranteed, right?
I know, that's why I'm trying to give it to him.
So we're trying to give it to him because he has a bunch of kids?
No, because I'm trying to get rid of the overtime. I'm trying to get rid of the time and a half.
Gotcha.
And I think if we looked,
I just feel like there needs to be a fair division.
I don't remember the total amount of money. I don't think it was close to $100,000 that he made last year with the overtime. Does anybody have that number off the top of their head? I can't remember.
Well, I just did the math based on 1,000 hours of overtime is around 35,000.
It was about 85.
Yeah, last year, if I recall correctly, and Stephen would have the exact number, but it was like 29,000.
It's in here somewhere, the total amount that he made compared to the budget. you know, what his rate was and what the actual was. It's in here somewhere, I just don't know where to lay my hands on it.
No, it's not in the budget package. We pulled I pulled the last overtime report. Let me see if I can find that
Okay.
as well.
I mean, I think he made well over, that's what I'm saying, I think he made well over the 68.
My math's got him around 84. Just rough math sitting here.
Okay, yep, I have the most recent one. Let me just,
And I can't go any higher than 68. I know you're not even wanting to go as high as 68, but
That's still a $20,000 raise.
With 68, he would not be salaried, or you're proposing?
I would ask him to be salaried or
Salaried at 68.
or definitely curtail the overtime that would be managed by the city manager.
I would prefer salary.
I would prefer salary as well.
Well, if the math is right, and even if he was at 84 and we got him to 68, and technically we are saving money, even though it is a $20,000 a year raise, we're saving around, I don't know, I'd have to.
And if
do
you want to go
math.
higher on Mr. Bishop, I'm good with that
We
too.
would save that anyway, once his overtime was curtailed.
If we got the hours right.
Mr. Mayor.
So the real question is, if Mr. Barber put in 1,000 hours of overtime, can he do his job if we say you can't put in that? Am I not correct? We can't say, oh, we're going to cut your overtime unless we look at the reason for the overtime and someone make a determination of the need of the overtime, because you cannot ask him to do his job and then tell him that he can't make the time to do it. That's my concern. I want him on a salary as much as anybody, but the overtime is totally, and I appreciate, Councilor Hines, what you said about time management. None of us know how he does his time management. I would assume that his superior, Mr. Bishop, would know. And I've heard no complaints from Mr. Bishop about how Mr. Barber managed his time. So, you know, rather than just take shots in the dark, I'm concerned about telling, if we can't get him on a salary, I think it's a mistake for us to start saying, you can't work overtime, because now you're going down a road where you can't work overtime, but you must get your job done. And that's a dangerous road for someone in his position.
I don't think anybody ever said anything about not working
No,
overtime.
Mr. Barber does a lot of extra things on behalf of the city. And it may be that those things would have to be curtailed, not his job per se, but all the extra things that he loves to do. It may be that we can't afford to pay him for those things.
Correct. And I didn't say no overtime. I said that the overtime amount would have
Managed.
to be managed.
Right.
Yes.
And that is definitely a fact. It really has to be managed. Even if he's salary, all the hours that he's working still need to be managed.
We still need him to
I
go home
mean,
so he's
just plain
healthy.
and simple.
Yeah.
In my history, Mr. Barber, when you work too much overtime, your taxes go up so much that you make less because you work too much overtime. Because you move to a different tax bracket.
Depends on
I
where
think
you're
he's
at.
already there. Okay, so let's
So what if,
get back to that.
I would like to suggest we, instead of 68, maybe we go to 65. That way it still kind of keeps a division in between. Because say, not saying, Mr. Bishop is no longer here and Mr. Barber gets moved up. There's only still a $2,000 difference between job descriptions, right? So then we're gonna be looking at, now Mr. Barber may want, not saying you do, may want more money because now he is doing a different job that he feels needs to be compensated for better. There still needs to be a division in the amount of money between job descriptions.
I totally agree.
Just to close the loop on that, on the current, using the same pace, it'd be 36,000 annual, or 1,000 hours.
$36,000. Okay.
That's pretty
And I would say, look at the page 8,
Well, yeah.
which is right there on your same book. And if you will look at the number 1 in the police department and the number 2 in the police department, there's not that much difference between them. Of course, there's a whole lot of longevity there. But if you look at it, I think the 70 and the 68 is pretty close.
And maybe there's some overtime built into that as well.
All right, I realize that.
So,
Works 43 a week. He works 40.
I just don't think $2,000 difference between the two positions, that's not,
Okay, so let's hear it.
that's not.
Like I said, I just threw that out to get this conversation started.
I'm with D, 70, 65.
What do y'all think? Everybody okay with that? Are we giving Mr. Bloom that direction?
I'm okay with it. Don't know how they feel about it.
You agree?
Don't know how our 2 employees feel about it, but,
I don't know either.
I mean, I'm okay with it.
I'm sorry, we did not hear the second number. Mr.
He
Vice
said
President?
70 and 65.
70 and 65? Is that what Mr. Vice President said?
Yeah.
May I ask a
Can
question?
always do 72 and 68. Yes, sir, of course. Who are you asking it of?
Mr. Barber and Mr. Bishop. Based on all the information that the council has presented tonight, would it be accurate to say that Mr. Barber last year made more money than you did, Mr. Bishop? So he is currently already making more money than you because he's working more hours, correct?
Because Mr. Bishop is salaried.
Yes, sir.
Because you're salaried and he's not. Thank you for that correction.
Oh, no, it wasn't a correction, it was just,
Well, no, I appreciate
correct.
it. My point is that in the end, due to Mr. Barber's overtime, he is currently already making more per year than you are.
Correct.
Mr. Bishop's probably working just as many hours, if not more. It's just that Mr. Barber's getting paid for it. Mr. Bishop is salaried.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop,
Yes, sir.
for working for free.
Yeah. Okay, so did we land? I would still feel better at 70 and 68, because I think he's more likely to go salaried if we do.
I'm good at 65 and 70.
Y'all sticking at 65? All right, Mr. Bloom, you have your walk-in orders. All right. Can I leave that area? Ready for me to leave that area and go down to utility electric?
Madam President,
Yeah, who said that? Yes, ma'am.
can we go ahead and take a 5-minute break, please?
It is 10 minutes to 8. We're going to break until 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.